The music slammed through my body like a second heartbeat, each bass note thudding against my ribs as I pushed through the crowd. Crystal chandeliers scattered fractured light across the marble floors of the old hotel ballroom, turning the air into liquid gold. Perfume, laughter, and the soft clash of glass filled the space. Everything glittered too brightly, too perfectly, as if I'd stumbled into someone else's dream. I wasn't supposed to be here. I was Clara Bennett, a freelance architectural illustrator 3 months behind on rent, dragged along by my roommate, Maya Chen, who'd been hired to film this charity gala. "Just hold the reflector and try not to drop it," Maya had said, squeezing my shoulder before disappearing into the sea of sequins. I nodded, smiling weakly, my stomach gnawing at itself. I'd lived all day on instant coffee and the faint hope that staff might get leftovers later. Everywhere I looked, beauty gleamed. Silk gowns, black tuxedos, champagne laughter. I felt like a smudge of charcoal on a marble canvas. I focused on keeping the reflector steady, letting the light bounce where Maya needed it, trying not to think about how dizzy I felt. The nausea crept in slowly, curling up from my empty stomach. I leaned against a column, forcing air into my lungs. The room seemed to tilt. I blinked through the shimmer of chandeliers, and that's when I saw him. He didn't move like anyone else. While the crowd swirled in glittering patterns, he cut through it with measured precision. Straight, silent, unstoppable. 3 men shadowed him, all in dark suits, scanning the room with the same quiet alertness. His presence drew the air toward him. His suit didn't sparkle. It absorbed the light like midnight silk. When he turned his head, the glow caught along his jawline, the edges of his dark hair. His face was all planes and restraint, gray eyes the color of forged steel. Not classically handsome, but magnetic. Something deep and wordless in me whispered, "Danger." I couldn't look away. And then his gaze found me. Everything stilled, the music, the chatter, even the rhythm of my pulse. A half smile curved across his lips, fleeting as a flashbulb. For a breathless instant, I felt stripped bare, seen down to the marrow. It wasn't just that he looked at me, it was that he looked through me. Someone brushed my shoulder. Champagne splashed down my borrowed black blouse. "Sorry," I gasped, fumbling for a napkin. When I looked up again, he was gone. "Clara, there you are." Maya's voice cut through the noise. She hurried over, camera hanging from her neck, cheeks flushed. "I need you upstairs, balcony shot." I followed her gratefully, climbing a narrow staircase to the upper floor. The music softened to a muffled thrum as we stepped onto a small balcony overlooking the ballroom. "Hold this," Maya said, pressing the reflector into my trembling hands. "And don't drop it. It costs more than your tuition." I managed a weak laugh, tightening my grip. The metal edge dug into my palms. My arms shook. Below us, the crowd rippled under golden light. People laughing, dancing, shining. I felt lightheaded, like I was watching from underwater. "Maya," I tried to call, but the word drowned beneath the music. The world flickered at the edges, spots of black blooming across my vision. The reflector slipped. Maya's voice became a distant echo calling my name. Then the floor disappeared. I fell, weightless, soundless, until strong arms caught me, halting the collapse. A steady heartbeat thudded against my ear. Somewhere near, a low voice murmured, "Don't be afraid." And the last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me was that same face, those gray eyes that had already seen far too much. I woke to the scent of leather and sandalwood, a warm, steady fragrance that made it hard to tell where I was. Soft golden light filtered through tinted glass, and it took me several seconds to realize I wasn't lying on the ballroom floor. I was resting against a solid chest that rose and fell in calm, even breaths. "You're awake." The voice above me was deep, smooth, edged with quiet command. I looked up and saw him, the man from the gala, Damien Voss. Everything rushed back, the lights, the music, that piercing gray gaze, the fall. My pulse spiked, blood turning cold. I was inside a limousine. The cabin was spacious and silent, lined in dark leather. Outside, San Francisco streamed past in streaks of white and gold. "Where am I?" I managed, clutching the wrinkled fabric of my dress. "On the way to a clinic," he said simply. "You fainted, likely low blood sugar." "I don't need a clinic," I protested. "I just need to go home. Really, I'm fine." He turned his head toward me, and the weight of his gaze froze my words. There was something in those eyes that made lying impossible. "You hit your head when you fell," he said. "I'm not letting you collapse in the middle of my event." My event?" I stammered. One corner of his mouth curved faintly. "I'm the primary sponsor, and the one who caught you." Heat crawled up my neck. "Thank you, but you didn't have to." "Quiet," he said softly, not harshly, but with enough authority that I obeyed without thinking. "We're almost there." The car stopped in front of a glass building tucked away in the financial district. No sign, no name, just a private entrance guarded by two men in suits. One opened the door. "Mr. Voss." Damien stepped out first, then turned and offered his hand to me. His palm was large, warm, steady. I hesitated, then placed my trembling fingers in his. He helped me up with surprising gentleness. Inside, the clinic looked nothing like a hospital, more like a luxury hotel suite. Clean air, soft lighting, silence so deep it pressed against my ears. A woman in a white coat hurried over, eyes flicking nervously toward him. "She is someone I brought in. Run a full check." "Yes, Mr. Voss." I sat on the examination bed, trying to hide my shaking hands. The doctor checked my blood pressure, my pupils, my pulse. "Just exhaustion and low sugar," she concluded kindly. "I told you I'm fine," I murmured. Damien stood near the door, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on me. "What have you eaten today?" "Coffee," I admitted. His brows drew together. He turned to a nurse. "Bring something edible and water." A tray appeared minutes later, toast, cheese, and sparkling water. I hesitated, then gave in. The first bite almost made me dizzy with relief. "Thank you," I whispered. He didn't answer, just watched me with an unreadable expression. There was concern there, but also something else. When the doctor left, he moved closer, leaning just enough for his voice to brush against my hair. "From now on, take better care of yourself, Clara Bennett." It sounded half like an order, half like a warning. "You don't have to worry about me," I said softly. "We're strangers who just happened to meet." "Nothing about tonight was an accident," he replied. "You shouldn't have collapsed at my gala." I wanted to argue, but words deserted me. He straightened, buttoned his jacket, and placed a small cream-colored business card on the table beside me. His name embossed in black, followed by a single phone number. "If you ever need anything, call me." Don't think," he interrupted. "Just call." He turned toward the door, footsteps silent against the floor. The faint trace of his cologne lingered behind him, warm and dark. I stared at the card, at the simple elegance of his name, and a chill slid down my spine. I didn't know why he'd helped me, and maybe I should have been afraid of that. But when the door clicked shut and the room fell silent again, I realized my fingers were still curled tightly around the card, as if it was the only thing tethering me to whatever strange world I'd just stepped into. I hadn't even caught my breath when Damien returned after a few short phone calls in Italian. He stood by the doorway, his gaze cool yet unreadable. "My car is waiting downstairs," he said quietly. "I'll have someone take you home." Moments later, I found myself once again inside that same limousine, the city light sliding past the tinted glass, while unanswered questions swirled restlessly in my mind. As the limousine rolled out of the city, I sat in silence, hands clasped tightly together, eyes fixed on the blur of lights outside the tinted window. The dizziness had passed, but my heart still beat too fast, as if my body hadn't caught up with safety. Across from me, Damien watched quietly, the amber glow carving sharp lines along his face. He didn't speak, only glanced at me now and then, a fleeting look that somehow took my breath away. "I can go on my own," I said softly. His gaze shifted to me, calm but unyielding. "Where do you live?" 23rd Street, near the tram stop." He nodded, murmured something to the driver in that low, controlled tone, and the car fell back into silence. The familiar streets appeared, dim lights, cracked walls, graffiti peeling like old paint. When the car stopped, I reached for the handle, but his voice halted me. "I'll have someone walk you up." "That's not necessary." "It is," he said simply. "I prefer to know you're safe." Two men in dark suits stepped out, one opening my door, the other leading the way to the entrance. I felt more escorted than accompanied. When I fumbled with the old lock to my apartment building, the limousine still idled at the curb. Only when the heavy metal door clicked shut behind me did it finally drive off, vanishing into the night like a ghost. Inside, the small apartment was lit up. Maya paced the living room, anxiety written all over her face. When she saw me, she rushed forward. "God, Clara," she cried, grabbing my shoulders. "Are you okay? You just collapsed, and then he appeared out of nowhere. He caught you before you even hit the ground. He wouldn't let anyone else touch you." I blinked, disoriented. "He caught me? You don't remember? You went down," I screamed, and suddenly he was there, like he'd been watching you the whole time. "Do you even know who he is?" I sank onto the worn couch, the business card still clutched in my hand. "His name is Damien Voss." Maya froze. "Voss, as in the Voss family?" I nodded. "Clara, they practically own half the city. His men blocked everyone off. One of them told me you were being taken care of and gave me a number for updates. I've been getting texts all evening." I closed my eyes, trying to piece it all together. The music, the lights, the fall, his scent, his voice. He said he wanted to see my paintings. "What?" Maya dropped onto the couch beside me. "He said he collects work from young artists. He wants to see mine. I know how insane that sounds." Maya took my hand, squeezing gently. "Clara, people like him don't help strangers out of kindness. Please be careful." I nodded, though my mind was far away, still caught in that moment when his arms had wrapped around me, when his voice had rumbled low and steady, when for a heartbeat I'd felt safe. Later, when Maya went to bed, I sat alone in the quiet. The city outside hummed softly, trains clattering somewhere in the distance. The business card lay in my hand, cool and smooth beneath my fingers. I traced the embossed letters of his name and heard his voice again in my mind. From now on, take better care of yourself. I should have been afraid of him, I knew that. But fear wasn't what filled me. It was something stranger, heavier, like a thread that still connected us across the darkness between our worlds. I placed the card on my nightstand, telling myself I'd forget it. But when I turned off the light and closed my eyes, all I could see was his face, those gray eyes that restrained intensity, and hear the low timbre of his voice, speaking my name as if it meant something more than it ever had before. Clara Bennett, just my name. Yet in his voice, it sounded like both a promise and a warning. I'd lost count of how many times I'd turned that business card over in my hands during the next 3 days. Every time the light caught the embossed letters, Damien Voss, my pulse quickened, not from fear, but from something heavier, magnetic. I told myself it had all been an accident, a wealthy man helping a fainted girl at a gala, nothing more. But on the 4th morning, sunlight spilling through the blinds, my phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number, a familiar voice. Clara Bennett. I nearly dropped the phone. It's Damien Voss. For some reason, I straightened instinctively, as if he could see me through the line. Oh, hello, I was actually meaning to thank you. No need, he cut in, calm and decisive. I've seen your drawings. My drawings? I spoke with Maya. She sent me a few pictures of your architectural illustrations. Maya did what? She thought I should take a look. A short silence followed, filled only by the steady rhythm of his breathing. I'll come see them in person this afternoon. I froze. You don't have to. I want to, he said simply. Every word carried the quiet weight of inevitability. Before I could respond, the line went dead. The apartment felt suddenly too small, too bright. What's going on? Maya appeared, holding a coffee mug, hair tousled. Damien called. She blinked. He called you? He said he's coming, today, to see my drawings. Within seconds, our apartment turned into a war zone. Maya sprang into action, shoving books into shelves, dusting surfaces, muttering to herself about billionaires and bad timing. I just stood there, useless, watching my hands shake. By 2 o'clock, the place was spotless, almost unrecognizable. I wore my simplest white blouse, tied my hair back, and tried to breathe normally. But when the knock finally came, 3 short, deliberate raps, my lungs forgot how. Maya's whisper was barely audible. Oh my God, it's him. I opened the door, and there he was. Damien Voss, tall and composed in a charcoal suit, framed by the light from the hallway. The man beside him, security, undoubtedly, stood a few steps behind. May I come in? He asked, his voice deep, polite, but leaving no room for refusal. He stepped inside, his presence filling the tiny apartment, the faint scent of sandalwood immediately changing the air. I didn't expect you'd actually come, I stammered. I said I would, he replied, his gaze sweeping over the room before landing on my sketches. He crossed to my work table. My illustrations lay scattered there, thin lines of ink, muted shades of blue and gray, quiet fragments of imagined cities. He studied them in silence. The air thickened. I could hear only the faint ticking of the wall clock and the uneven rhythm of my own breathing. When he finally turned back to me, his eyes held no uncertainty. You sell these? I hesitated. I've never thought about selling them. Think about it now. He drew out a checkbook, laid it on the table. These 3, $35,000. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. 35, what? Thousand, he repeated, as casually as if he were naming the weather. Damien, they're just sketches. They're not worth. I decide the value of what I want, Clara. His tone was quiet but immovable, each word deliberate, final. The room felt smaller, denser. I stared at him, stunned, while he remained perfectly composed, as if generosity and control were the same thing. Why, I whispered, why would you do that? He paused, then said, because I see what others overlook. Maya didn't make a sound. She just watched as he filled out the check, tore it from the book, and placed it in my trembling hand. I'll send someone to collect them tomorrow, he said. Keep your copies. I don't intend to take everything. He turned toward the door, then stopped. His voice dropped to something softer, almost intimate. Clara, sometimes the worth of a thing isn't in the paper or the ink. It's in the way someone chooses to see it and decides it's theirs to keep. Then he was gone. The door closed behind him, leaving the faint trace of sandalwood in the air. I looked down at the check, $35,000, and the numbers blurred before my eyes. Maya exhaled shakily. Clara, you just sold 3 sketches for a year's rent. I didn't answer. My gaze drifted to the business card, still sitting by the easel, right where I'd left it that first night. Now it wasn't alone. When Damien left, silence settled over the apartment, thick, tangible, as if the walls themselves still held his presence. The faint trace of sandalwood lingered in the air, curling around me like a ghost I couldn't shake off. I sat there for what felt like hours, the check still in my hand, the dark inked numbers slowly blurring before my eyes. I didn't know how long I'd been sitting like that until Maya touched my shoulder. Clara, are you okay? I looked up, my mouth opening without a sound. You're shaking, she whispered. I've never met anyone like him. He scares me. I didn't respond. Part of me agreed, but another part was caught somewhere between fear and fascination, pulled toward the image of those steel gray eyes that seemed to see too much. We talked for a while before Maya went to bed, but I stayed up, staring at the business card and the check lying side by side, as if together they formed some kind of message I wasn't yet ready to read. Then, at exactly 11, there was a knock at the door. 3 short, deliberate taps, just like the ones earlier that day. My stomach tightened. Maya, I called softly. She appeared, frowning. Who the hell would visit this late? I opened the door. A courier stood there, dressed in black, holding a long rectangular box tied with a silver ribbon. Delivery for Miss Clara Bennett, he said. From whom? No sender listed, ma'am, just a note. I signed, closed the door, and set the box on the table. Maya hovered nearby, suspicion clear in her eyes. Maybe don't open it yet, she murmured, half joking, half serious. But I was already tugging the ribbon loose. Inside was silver tissue paper, soft, weightless. Beneath it, a dark blue silk dress shimmered like midnight water. A smaller box held a pair of delicate silver earrings and matching heels. Understated, elegant, impossibly beautiful. On top lay a folded card. I opened it. Only one line, written in strong, slanted handwriting. For Friday, wear your hair down. No name, none needed. Oh my God, Maya breathed. It's him, isn't it? Damien. I said nothing, my gaze fixed on the dress. The lamplight rippled over the silk like breath. Clara, you need to send it back, right now, Maya demanded. Men like him don't give gifts out of kindness. I know, I murmured. Then don't. But I can't throw it away, I interrupted softly. Look at it, Maya. It's beautiful. She sighed, frustration flickering in her eyes. You're walking straight into danger, Clara. I knew that too. After she went to bed, I stayed by the window, fingertips grazing the fabric. It was cool and impossibly soft, as if it had been made just for me. How did he know my size? The moonlight caught the silk, turning it to liquid blue. I lifted the card again, eyes lingering on the words, "Wear your hair down." Part of me wanted to run, to end this before it spiraled any further. But another part, darker, quieter, longed to step closer, to understand why he looked at me that way, why his voice could still echo in my mind hours after he'd gone. That night, I hung the dress by the window, where the moonlight painted it in silver and shadow. I sat and watched until the city grew quiet, and only then did I realize, whatever this was, whatever game I had stumbled into, I was already too deep to escape. I hung the dress by the window until almost midnight before drawing the curtains. When I finally sat on the bed, the card, for Friday, "Wear your hair down," still lay in my palm like a gentle command. I set it beside the business card and the check, promising myself I'd be more sensible in the morning. But before I could reach for my first coffee, my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Clara Bennett?" A woman's voice, low, clear, courteous like a fine blade. "This is she. This is Isabella Voss, Damien's sister. My brother asked me to reach out. I believe you'll need a little support preparing for Friday night." I froze, glancing at the blue dress, sleeping in the early light. "Thank you, but I think that wasn't a suggestion." Her interruption was soft and final. "I'll pick you up at noon, lunch, then my stylist. I don't like being late." The line went dead before I could object. I stared at the dark screen, rattled and, strangely, calmer, as if someone had taken the wheel of my life, with a few precise words. At exactly noon, a black Mercedes pulled up in front of my building. No limousine, no loud escort, just a driver opening the rear door, and Isabella stepping out like a perfectly drawn line. A beige coat, slim sunglasses, hair pinned back, an air of immaculate control. When she removed her glasses, I saw the same gray in her eyes as Damien's, but cooler, more deliberate. "Clara." She extended her hand. The handshake was firm, brief, decisive. "My brother says you're too thin." I assumed he was exaggerating. Perhaps he isn't. I flushed. "I forget to eat when I'm working." "That's a dangerous habit, especially around Damien." "Why?" "He has an instinct to fix what he considers not right. With Damien, care often looks like control." She said it like a fact she'd tested 100 times. The car slid over San Francisco's hills, the bay flashing blue between rows of Victorians. We arrived at a discreet restaurant in Pacific Heights. The manager recognized Isabella at once and led us to a private room. Everything unfolded smoothly, as if the world had been prearranged to make space for her. So, Isabella set down the menu, eyes never leaving me. "Tell me about your work." "Didn't Damien tell you?" "I prefer to hear from the person whose voice is inside the drawings." I told her. "I sketch worn structures with time still clinging to them, narrow staircases, arched windows, stone polished by footsteps. I use ink and cold washes to hold the silence of buildings the way one holds a memory before it fades." Isabella listened closely, asking granular questions about scale, horizon lines, the handling of light, questions that proved she understood more than the surface of art. "You have talent," she said, as the main course arrived. But talent alone doesn't explain Damien buying 3 pieces at once and paying that much. I thought he paid too much, I admitted, a sharp pang as I remembered the check. With Damien, money is a tool. What's unusual is your drawings contain something he wants to possess. A chill traced my spine. I only draw what I see. And he sees you in them, Isabella replied evenly. The silence, the discipline, the breath between 2 beats. We ate in quiet for a while. I realized I was taking larger bites because she kept glancing to make sure I did. When lunch ended, Isabella rose. Let's go, the stylist is waiting. The studio was tucked into a calm alley in Russian Hill. No sign, just a high pane of glass, and light soft as fog. Her stylist, a man with an economical smile, sat me down, presented a color board, and asked precise questions. Sensitivities to powders, where hair tangles most, what I wanted to feel when stepping into a room full of strangers. Isabella sat behind me, her reflection aligned with mine in the mirror. Friday will hold more curiosity than goodwill, she said, a reminder in the tone. You need to arrive as a complete answer. I'm not used to rooms like that, I confessed, staring at the bare-faced version of myself. Shadows from sleepless nights under my eyes. You don't need to be used to them, you just don't ask permission. They let my hair fall in loose waves, trimmed a few pieces to frame my face, laid on makeup so thin it looked like skin. Another specialist chose accessories for the blue dress, a narrow silver cuff, a small clutch, a hidden clip to keep my hair tidy even worn down. In the hush of shears and the faint scent of powder, my pulse steadied, as if finally there was an order to things. When they were finished, I looked in the mirror and paused. It was still me, but lit correctly. Not showy, not loud, just clear. Isabella nodded. Damien was right about your bone structure. Minimal works for you. It lets people look into your eyes. Thank you for today, I said as we returned to the car. I'm grateful, truly. Clara, she waved a hand, this isn't charity. When my family sets its eyes on something, we protect it. She handed me a small bag, fresh makeup, hair oil, a few essentials. Friday matters to Damien. Powerful people will be there. Don't give them a reason to doubt him. The words pricked at my pride. I won't embarrass him. I don't need your promise, Isabella said, a faint curve at her mouth. I need you to understand whose field you're playing on. We stopped in front of my building at dusk. She took in the rusted gate, chipped steps, graffiti layered over graffiti. This isn't safe for someone walking into the storm. I know. My fingers tightened on the bag. But it's mine. Isabella nodded once. Before I could open the door, her voice softened, fabric laid over a blade. Be careful with Damien, Clara, not because he would harm you, because he doesn't know how to protect delicate things without breaking them. The door closed, carrying with it a hint of orange blossom and fresh paper. I stood alone on the stoop, holding the bag. In that moment, I understood that Friday wasn't just a gallery night. It was an exam, whether I could survive their room and still be myself. Friday night arrived faster than I was ready for. I spent the day moving through a haze, tidying my desk, adjusting sketches, glancing at the blue dress swaying in the window light. Isabella's words echoed in my mind. Damien doesn't know how to protect fragile things without breaking them. I didn't know if it was a warning or a kindness, maybe both. At 7 sharp, the black limousine stopped in front of my crumbling building. When the driver opened the door, that familiar scent of sandalwood and leather wrapped around me like gravity. Damien sat inside, black suit, white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, calm as if the city itself pulsed to his rhythm. "You're on time," he said when I slid in. I tried my best. His gaze drifted to my hair, worn down, just as he'd asked, then to the dark blue dress. A faint smile curved his mouth, better than I imagined. I turned away, heart hammering, watching the lights blur past the window. The city shimmered in gold, and for a moment, it felt like the air inside the car held its breath with me. The gallery was on the top floor of a glass building overlooking the bay. As we entered, white light bathed everything: art, people, motion, whispers. Damien's hand rested lightly against my back, polite yet claiming. I could feel the weight of eyes turning. People watched him with deference, and me with speculation. "Don't let them intimidate you," he murmured near my ear. "They're only trying to guess why I brought you here." "And why did you?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer, only let that almost smile linger. We moved through the main exhibition hall, where collectors and artists spoke in carefully measured tones. I'd never been in a space like this, too bright, too precise, as if every breath needed to be approved first. A woman approached, silver dress, platinum hair, sharp eyes. "Damien," she said with a European lilt, "it's been too long." "Elena." He inclined his head. Her gaze shifted to me, a knowing smile playing on her lips. "And this must be—" "Clara Bennett," he said, voice low but carrying. "An architect with remarkable precision." Elena shook my hand. "He once saved me, you know," she said, tone equal parts fond and bitter. 3 years ago, I nearly lost everything. Damien bought my entire collection and forced the gallery to reinstate me. No one says no to him. I smiled awkwardly. Elena studied me, something like pity flickering behind her composure. "If he's interested in you, remember, every gift has its price." "Elena," Damien said quietly, and the air stilled. She gave a small, sharp laugh and drifted away. I turned to him. Was she telling the truth? "Yes, and you're not denying it?" "There's nothing to deny. I helped her. In return, she survived." I couldn't tell if that was compassion or control. He looked at me then, softer. "Don't believe their stories about me. They only see the parts they can name. And the rest, you'll have to see for yourself." We stopped before the central piece, a massive abstract painting in black, gray, and gold. The surface shimmered under the light, alive with motion. I noticed the small plaque at the base, the Voss Foundation. "All of this belongs to you?" I asked. "No," he said, a hint of irony in his voice. "To us. Us? My family, but tonight I chose to bring you into it." A strange weight pressed on my chest. Every whisper, every toast seemed to orbit him. He didn't dominate the room by volume. He simply was the room. "Are you afraid?" he asked, eyes fixed on mine. "I'm just not used to it." "Get used to it," he said, voice dropping lower as he leaned in, his breath brushing my ear. "Because from now on, this world belongs to you, too." The air froze. The gallery noise faded until there was only the sound of my own heartbeat and the quiet certainty in his eyes. I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Some part of me wanted to run. Another part, darker, deeper, was already burning. The music from the gallery still echoed faintly in my head as we left. Damien's hand rested at the small of my back, guiding me through the crowd of lingering glances and hushed curiosity. Outside, the night air tasted of salt and fog. the black limousine waited. His hand brushed my arm, barely a touch, but it sent a shiver straight through me. He opened the door, I slid inside. The cabin glowed dimly, all amber and silence. "How do you feel?" he asked, voice calm, knowing. "Overwhelmed," I admitted. "And it seems everyone's afraid of you, even Elena." He leaned back, faint smile on his lips. "Fear and respect often look the same. Which one do you prefer?" "Depends on the person. Most can live with both, but you—" His eyes darkened. "Don't need either." I stopped breathing. "So what do you want from me, Damien?" He studied me long enough that I had to look away. Then quietly he said, "Everything." One word. And the air between us shifted, dense, electric. His fingers traced my jaw, gentle yet unyielding. "You don't understand yet," he murmured, voice rougher now. "But the moment I caught you that night, everything changed. For me or for you? For both." I tried to smile, to anchor myself. "You say it like I'm part of some grand design." "No," he said, eyes unwavering. "You're the exception." The air thickened, the leather and sandalwood closed in around us. I could feel his breath at my skin, measured, deliberate. "Damien," I whispered, not sure if it was plea or surrender. He leaned closer, his voice a breath against my ear. "Tell me you don't feel this, Clara. Say it, and I'll stop." I could have, but I didn't. Instead, I leaned forward. The kiss began as hesitation, then deepened, sharp and consuming. Heat flared between us, reckless and inevitable. His hand slid into my hair, pulling me closer. My fingers caught his jacket, as if it were the only thing keeping me from falling apart. I had once collapsed into his arms by accident. This time, I chose to fall. When we finally broke apart, our breathing tangled in the dark. Streetlights reflected in his eyes, silver and dangerous, like a storm barely contained. "You shouldn't have done that," I said, though my voice trembled. "Maybe," he replied, "but I'm not sorry." I turned away, but the ghost of the kiss burned under my skin. I knew then, whatever this was, it had crossed the line between fascination and something far more perilous. The car slowed. Outside, the city sprawled below like a river of light. Damien reached for my hand, his touch both question and command. "Come," he said. "There's something I want to show you." I didn't ask where, I just followed. The path led upward, the air thinning, the lights fading behind us. Ahead, a house of glass glowed faintly against the night sky, standing apart like a secret no one dared to name. I looked back at the city once more, then forward again. From the moment he said everything, from the moment our lips met, I knew there was no going back. Damien Voss was not merely the man who caught me when I fell. He was the gravity that made falling inevitable. The dark god who could protect or destroy with the same hand. And I, Clara Bennett, was no longer standing on the edge. I had already stepped into his world. I don't remember how I stepped out of the car. Maybe I was still dizzy from that kiss, the kind that melts the world into heat and silence until nothing exists except breath and heartbeat. The night wind carried the scent of sandalwood as Damien led me up the stone path toward the glass house on the hill. Light spilled from within, gold and quiet, like a secret meant only for two. Inside, the space was vast but not ostentatious. Everything wood, steel, glass, light was placed with precision, like a symphony of restraint. Power whispered here. It didn't need to shout. At the center of the living room hung 3 of my drawings. carefully framed and lit by their own lamps. I stopped. It felt like standing in front of pieces of myself that had been claimed by another world. "Why me?" I asked softly. "Because you're real," Damien said behind me. "You create beauty out of pain without hiding it." "You talk like you've seen my pain." "I've seen everything." His tone wasn't arrogant. It was terrifyingly honest. He poured wine. "Sit," he said, voice low. "Let me tell you something." I did. He stood by the window, the city sprawling below. "My family built its power with will and blood. Nothing we have came clean. I learned that to protect what you love. Sometimes you do what others can't understand." Then he turned, eyes storm gray. "But you'll never have to fear me." I smiled faintly. "Funny, the ones who say that are usually the ones we end up fearing most." He set a glass in my hand. "Maybe, but I don't want you afraid, Clara. I want you to believe." "Believe in what?" "That there's something older than reason between us." "Older than reason?" I echoed. "My family believes in something called primal recognition," he said, his voice deliberate. "When you meet the right person, instinct knows before the mind does. It isn't fate, it's blood memory." I went still. "Is that why, when I fainted, you said something?" His gaze flickered. "You heard?" "Not clearly, just one word." I swallowed. "You said hours, didn't you?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." "Why?" "Because in that moment, I knew." "Knew what?" "That from then on, you belonged to my world, whether you realized it or not." The word hours echoed inside me, both tender and possessive. "I don't like belonging," I said quietly. "I'm not a painting to hang on your wall." "I don't want to cage you," he replied. "I want to keep you safe." "From the world or from you?" He smiled, that dangerous, sorrowful smile. "Maybe both, but I'd never hurt you." "Can you promise that?" I just did. Outside, the wind brushed against the glass. Inside, the air felt suspended between light and dark, and I realized I did believe him. Maybe because, for the first time, I felt seen. Not as a project or a prize, but as a person with cracks he didn't flinch from. Damien reached out, his fingers brushing mine. "Ours," he murmured, "isn't ownership. It's recognition." Before I could answer, his lips found mine again. Slow, deep, certain. Not fire this time, but gravity, the quiet pull that can't be undone. His mouth tasted of wine and smoke. I melted into him, trembling and safe all at once. If the first kiss had been a spark, this one was the ember left behind, warm, consuming, inevitable. When we finally broke apart, he stayed close, tracing a line along my collarbone. "Now you understand," he whispered. "Power isn't about control. It's about letting someone touch what you fear and staying." I don't know if I nodded or just imagined it. I only know that night, in the house filled with art and silence, I was no longer just Clara Bennett, the architect. I had become part of Damien Voss's world. A world where everything had a price, and the price of love was myself. I fell asleep in his arms, his breathing slow and steady, as if the whole house breathed with him. When I woke, morning light spilled through the tall glass, tracing gold over my skin. Damien was gone. On the nightstand, still warm coffee, and a folded note written in his sharp, deliberate hand. "Downstairs, I made pastries, and there's a design I want you to see." I smiled, something I hadn't done in weeks. Downstairs, he stood by the window, sleeves rolled, sunlight painting his shoulders. "Good morning, Clara," he said softly. "I wasn't sure how you take your coffee, so I made both." I took a sip. This one's perfect. He smiled faintly. I thought it might be. I'm good at guessing. The days that followed felt suspended, like we were living inside a world that existed outside of time, quiet, luminous, impossibly intimate. Mornings were spent reading. He read aloud, voice low and deliberate, and sometimes, when I looked up, he was already watching me. "What?" I'd ask. "Nothing," he'd say. "Just watching how you think." At lunch, we ate on the terrace, bread, cheese, wine. The city shimmered far below us like a mirage. He spoke about architecture and art, about the way he chose who to support. Not by fame, he said, but by the feeling that echoes in silence. "In silence?" I asked. He nodded. "Silence tells you everything if you listen." By day, he was light. By night, he was shadow. Every evening, a phone call, a glance. "I have to go." "Work?" I asked once. "Yes." "What kind of work happens only after dark?" He kissed my forehead. "The kind you're better off not knowing." Then he was gone. At first, I waited. Then I stopped. The house felt different without him, emptier, colder. I'd sit in the studio he'd made for me, sketching shapes of absence, doors half open, silhouettes fading in the dark. No matter what I drew, he was always there. In the negative space, in the silence between lines. One night around 2 a.m., I heard the door unlock. He stepped in, still in his dark suit, but his expression had hardened. When he slipped off his jacket, I saw it, a faint streak of blood on his cuff. "Are you hurt?" I asked quietly. He glanced down, then smiled thinly. "No, not mine." The air tightened. My throat went dry. I wanted to ask, but the look in his eyes stopped me. It wasn't a threat, just a boundary. "Don't ask, Clara." So I didn't. He reached for me instead, fingers brushing my wrist. "Don't look at me like that," he murmured. "You know I'd never let anything hurt you." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But my pulse told another story. He kissed me, cold lips, faint metallic taste. I let him, but something in me shifted. I still melted against him, but part of me stayed awake, watching. When I woke the next morning, he was gone again. On the table, white orchids and a single note. "I know you saw. Thank you for not asking." My hand trembled as I touched the words. Part of me wanted to run, back to my tiny apartment, to noise, to normalcy. But another part already knew. I couldn't leave. I'd stepped into his world. And even if I didn't understand it, it had already claimed me. The rhythm continued. Calm mornings, warm afternoons, silent nights. I didn't ask. He didn't explain. And when he came back, he made me forget. Soft words, long kisses, small gestures that could almost erase the unease. "Do you think of me when you're gone?" I asked once. His lips curved, even when I shouldn't. I knew where I was, inside Damien Voss's world, where love and power wore the same face. I told myself I could leave any time, but deep down, I already knew I wouldn't. Because every time he looked at me, I saw myself, truly saw for the first time. And sometimes that's enough to keep you in the dark, even when you know the light is slipping away. The following days passed in a strange kind of silence. The daylight inside the glass house on the hill was still clear and soft, yet I began to sense something beneath it, a quiet pulse of unease I couldn't name. The peace felt too perfect, and like everything that's too perfect, it carried a hidden crack beneath its surface. That afternoon, Damien said he had an unexpected meeting. He kissed my forehead quickly before leaving, and I stayed behind with the kind of stillness that presses against the chest. The house seemed to hold its breath whenever he was gone. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the living room, staring at the paintings on the wall, 3 of them mine, and wondered who I was in his world. An artist, a lover, or just another ornament disguised as emotion? I hadn't meant to step into his private world until I heard the phone ring in his office. The sound was steady, sharp, unyielding. I walked toward it, intending only to silence it, but the screen lit up with a message. Completed. No trace left. My whole body froze. No trace left. 3 words that cut through my spine like ice. I put the phone down and stepped back, heart pounding so hard it hurt. When the door opened, I startled, the glass slipping from my fingers. Damien stood at the threshold, the wind tugging lightly at the edge of his coat. His expression wasn't angry or tender, only still, sharp, unreadable. "What are you doing, Clara?" "I heard the phone," I said, my voice unsteady, and I hated that he could hear the tremor in it. He walked closer, each step slow, deliberate. "Did you read the message?" "I didn't mean to." He stopped, standing so close I could feel the warmth of his breath. "In this house, curiosity can be more dangerous than you think." I stepped back slightly. "Are you threatening me?" "No." He tilted his head, his eyes softening. "I'm warning you." Then, as if to erase everything he'd just said, he lifted his hand and brushed his fingers along my cheek, his voice lowering. "I don't want secrets between us, Clara, but there are things that once you know them, you won't be safe anymore." I looked at him, my fear and longing tangled together. "What do you do on those nights when you leave?" He was silent for a long time. "I protect what's mine." I let out a small laugh. "And I'm part of that, am I?" "You're the only part that matters." The words should have comforted me, but instead, they made me shiver. From that day on, I started noticing the things I'd ignored before. The phone calls in Italian, the nights he vanished into the dark, the heaviness in his eyes when he returned. It felt as though I was living with 2 men, one tender and thoughtful, the other distant, cold, and unreachable. One evening, he left without a word. I sat in my studio, trying to draw to drown out the unease, but my pencil hovered uselessly above the paper. I couldn't create when my mind was filled with doubt. The sound of a car outside made me jolt. The clock read almost 2 a.m. The door opened and Damien walked in. His shirt was wrinkled, tie loose, sleeves rolled up. When he took off his coat, I saw it, a small streak of dried blood on his cuff. "Are you hurt?" I asked, barely above a whisper. He glanced down, then answered softly, "No, it's not mine." I stood still, a chill crawling down my spine. "What did you do?" He looked at me, calm, unreadable, not angry, not defensive, just quiet. Then, slowly, he said, "There are things you can't know. Believe me, Clara, sometimes the truth only hurts you." I didn't know if he was protecting me or protecting himself. I wanted to ask more, but as he moved closer, his breath brushed my skin, and every question disappeared. "Are you afraid of me?" he asked, his voice low, almost tired. I shook my head. "No, I'm afraid of believing in something I don't understand." He gave a faint, sorrowful smile. "So am I." Damien leaned down and kissed me. This kiss wasn't like before. It wasn't burning or hungry, but desperate, as if he were trying to hold on to something already slipping away. I could feel his heartbeat against mine, fast and trembling. For the first time, Damien was shaking. "I promise I'll never let anyone hurt you," he whispered, our foreheads pressed together. "And if that person is you?" I asked quietly. He froze, exhaled, and the faint smile faded. "Then I'll punish myself before I ever let that happen." The answer made my blood run cold. I no longer knew who I was in love with. The man who whispered poetry under sunlight, or the darkness he kept hidden behind it. The next morning he left early. On the dining table lay a small note. "I know you've seen things you shouldn't have, but don't forget, Clara, you are the only reason I still have any light left." I held the note in my hands, my heart heavy. I wanted to believe him, but the more I believed, the deeper I sank. At noon, sunlight flooded through the glass walls. I looked again at my paintings. Under the light, every stroke seemed to split, revealing thin, dark lines beneath, cracks that had always been there, waiting to show themselves. And I understood. The fracture wasn't just in the paintings, it was in me. I loved him, but at the same time, I began to fear that love, because it was no longer built on trust, it was dependence. And in Damien Voss's world, dependence was just another kind of captivity. That morning the fog was heavy, swallowing every trace of light around the glass house. I sat in the living room, reading the note Damien had left on the dining table over and over again. "You are the only reason I still have any light left." Each time I read it, the words felt like a thin thread wrapped around my wrist. Warm, gentle, yet tightening with every heartbeat. In the days that followed, Damien grew more distant, not through silence, but through restraint, a precise kind of care, as if he was afraid of crossing a line even he no longer trusted. I knew he was hiding something that existed just beyond the edge of the world I was allowed to see. One evening, he said he had to leave for a few days. His voice was calm as always, but his eyes carried weight. "Don't worry," he said softly, squeezing my hand. "Everything is under control." I nodded and tried to smile, though a strange tension coiled inside me. He left with 2 men in dark suits. I watched his car disappear into the fog, the emptiness spreading slowly through my chest. For 3 nights, I received short messages. "I'm fine," nothing more. On the 4th day, silence. That afternoon, an unmarked envelope arrived. Inside was a photograph of Damien standing before an old building, his eyes cold, surrounded by men I didn't recognize. On the back, a line written in black ink. "This is who he really is." I sat still for a long moment, gripping the photo until the paper bent. I didn't know whether I was more afraid of not believing or of believing. That evening, I tried calling him. No answer. I texted, no reply. The house felt suffocating, as if it too was holding its breath. At last, I grabbed my coat and stepped outside, leaving the dim light behind. The city below the hill was shrouded in mist. I took a cab to the address printed on the back of the photo, an old warehouse near the docks. The air smelled of salt and rust. The building loomed ahead, bricks damp with moisture, a slit of light under the steel door. I heard voices inside, Damien's low, familiar tone mixed with rougher ones. I crept closer, heart hammering. Through the narrow gap, I saw him, black shirt, sleeves rolled, a folder in his hand, speaking to 3 men. One handed him a thick envelope. Damien opened it, skimmed the contents, and nodded, expression unreadable. I couldn't catch every word, but fragments reached me. Remove, evidence, secure. Then one man laughed. "You're too soft, Damien. If it were me, that girl would already be gone." Damien didn't look at him, but his hand tightened. Don't mention her, he said, voice low but lethal. She has nothing to do with this. And what about you? The man asked. No answer. Then Damien slammed the envelope on the table. You forget who you're talking to. Silence, thick, unyielding. I stepped back, heart pounding wildly. 1 step, 2, and my foot hit a rusted can. The sound was small but enough. Damien turned, his gaze cut through the shadows, locking on me. For a heartbeat, time stopped. He said nothing, just looked, a mix of fury, fear, and despair. I turned and ran. Behind me, I heard the door burst open, footsteps echoing on wet cement. Clara, his voice was raw, desperate, nothing like the calm man I knew. Don't go, you don't understand. I didn't stop. I ran down the misty street, tears stinging my face. In my mind, everything collapsed, his words, his promises, his warmth, shattering into illusion. A car screeched to a halt in front of me. The door swung open, and Damien stepped out. His shirt was damp with fog, hair disheveled, eyes blazing. What do you think you saw, Clara? He asked, voice low, shaking with something between anger and pain. I saw the truth. My voice cracked. You're not who you say you are. You don't just protect, you control, you command, you destroy. He froze, then exhaled sharply, his eyes glinting through the mist. You don't understand. Everything I do, everything, is to keep things safe. To keep you safe. Safe? I laughed bitterly through my tears. You call killing people safe? He took a step closer, his eyes softening but full of torment. Clara, if I told you everything, you'd leave me. I know that. Maybe you're right, I said, meeting his gaze. But keeping me here with lies, that's not love, that's a cage. He didn't answer. He just stood there, half his face swallowed by fog, one side in light, the other in shadow. I'm leaving, I whispered, turning away. This time for real. Behind me, his voice broke through the silence, fragile and haunting. If you go, Clara, this world will devour you. Not because of me, but because of what I'm fighting. I stopped for a second, but didn't turn. Maybe, I said, but at least it'll be my choice. I walked into the mist, the cold wrapping around me, hollow and endless, as if I had lost something I'd never truly possessed. For the first time, I understood that darkness doesn't find us. Sometimes we are the ones who call its name. After that night, I didn't see him for days. Time drifted like mist over water, leaving behind an emptiness that had no shape. I kept drawing, kept breathing, but every stroke of my pencil trembled, as if each line whispered his name. Sometimes I wondered if I had truly left Damien, or if I was merely hiding from the storm that carried his face. Each morning, when sunlight slipped through the window of my old apartment, I still saw him in the dust, in the silence between heartbeats. One afternoon, as I was packing up my studio, the door opened. I didn't need to turn around. Only one person could change the air in a room simply by being there. You shouldn't be here, I said without looking. I know. His voice was hoarse, low, but I couldn't stay away. I turned. Damien stood there, shirt dark, eyes tired but alive. Something in him had softened, as if the armor he wore had finally begun to crack. I don't even know what to say to you, I sighed. Everything between us, it's wrong. Maybe, he said, stepping closer. But the only thing right is how I feel when I look at you. I wanted to argue, but his voice stopped me. In the fading light, I saw a loneliness in him deeper than any wound I could touch. You make me remember that I'm still human, he said, almost in a whisper. In a world built on numbers, power, and blood. You're the only thing that makes me want to be a man again." I froze, not because of his words, but because of how real they sounded. I took a step closer. "You make me forget that I should be afraid." Damien looked at me for a long moment, then smiled faintly, not proud, not mysterious, just tired of pretending to be strong. He raised his hand, brushing my cheek with a gentleness that felt like confession. "I promised myself I'd let you go if that's what you wanted," he said softly. "But I also know sometimes leaving isn't how we save each other." "And staying?" I asked, my voice trembling. He leaned forward, our foreheads touching, our breaths mingling. "Staying is a choice," he whispered, "and every decision will be yours." Time stilled. I closed my eyes, feeling his hand warm and shaking against my skin. For the first time, I saw not Damien Voss, the powerful, feared man, but simply a human being, scarred and fragile. "I'm staying," I murmured. He didn't answer, just exhaled, as if the whole world had shrunk into that single breath. We didn't kiss, we didn't need to. The air between us was full enough, a language without words. When he pulled me into his arms, I felt his heart racing, strong yet unsteady, as though he was afraid of the very feeling that kept him alive. I rested my head against his shoulder, listening to his heartbeat merge with the sound of rain outside. "I don't know what the future will look like," he said quietly. "But if I could choose, I'd want to learn how to love without having to protect through violence." I looked up at him. "Then let me teach you." He smiled, that rare, fragile smile that held no shadow, only light. That night, we stayed in the studio. No wine, no music, only the rain and our breathing. He told me about his youth, bound by the blood legacy of his family. I told him about mine, poor, uncertain, full of dreams that life had slowly erased. "I thought I was born only to keep things in order," he said, "until you made me want to break it." "I don't want you to change," I whispered. "I just want you to live." The rain fell outside. Inside, the distance between us dissolved, not through passion, but through stillness. His hand brushed my hair, down to my shoulder, slow and deliberate, as if memorizing the moment. And in that moment, I realized love doesn't save us. It simply makes us choose to stay, even when we know there's an abyss ahead. Damien took my hand, his voice low, almost a breath. "If someday you want to leave, I won't stop you. But if you stay, I swear I'll never let this world make you bow." I smiled through tears. "You don't have to swear. I just need you to be you." He tightened his grip gently, eyes steady, tender. "Then remember this, Clara. Every decision is yours. Not because I allow it, but because you deserve to be free." I nodded. In his arms, I was no longer the girl caught in darkness, but someone learning to stand inside it, unafraid, unbroken. And perhaps, for the first time, Damien was learning to step out of it too. After that rainy night, life began to change, not in chaos, but in quiet transformation. Damien still moved between two worlds, one of darkness, one of light, and I learned to exist in the fragile space between them, finding my own rhythm there. A few weeks later, a renowned gallery in San Francisco invited me to join a group exhibition. The news spread faster than I could comprehend. The first article appeared in a small art magazine calling me a striking new voice in contemporary art. I read it with disbelief. It felt like they were writing about someone else, not the girl who used to sketch in a damp, forgotten apartment. Damien said nothing except for one message. I told you, when you paint with your heart, the world listens. Isabella returned, this time as my advisor. The chill in her demeanor had softened. She visited my studio, examined each piece with quiet intensity, and finally said, "Now you've found your voice." We sat together over coffee, and for the first time there was mutual respect between us. "My brother believes in you," she said. "But don't think that makes you indebted. Let your talent silence the doubt." I nodded. "I will, I promise." Her gaze softened. "He's changed since you came along, Clara. He won't admit it, but I can see it in the way he's quiet now." "Changed for the better?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Enough that I've stopped being afraid." Isabella's presence drew attention from collectors. My new pieces sold fast, some for 10 times what I'd once earned. I still remember the night of the opening. Damien arrived late, staying in the background, his eyes following me through the crowd, proud but distant. After the event, he came to me, touched my hand, and said softly, "I didn't want to steal your moment. This is your world, Clara. I just wanted to see you belong to it." I smiled. "Without you, I wouldn't be here." He shook his head. "You still don't understand. I didn't open doors for you. I only cleared the ones trying to close them." His words lingered long after the lights dimmed. My career soared. My name appeared in interviews, magazines, on invitations from galleries in New York, Milan, Tokyo. I wasn't sure if I was happy or dreaming. I only knew that every time I finished a painting, I heard Damien's voice in my head. "Paint with your heart, Clara. Don't paint to be seen." Maya, my best friend who had once distrusted him, was now the one who believed in him the most. She got a job at a major art media company through a connection of Isabella's. "I can't believe it," she said when we met again at our old cafe. "He helped me, not because of you, because he said I deserved better." I blinked in surprise. "He said that?" She nodded. "I think I was wrong about him. He may not be perfect, but I can see one thing clearly. He really loves you." I looked down at my glass of wine, watching the amber light ripple. "Sometimes love isn't enough," I whispered. "Sometimes," Maya said softly, "it's the only thing that is." That night, when I returned home, Damien was waiting by the window. Moonlight drew sharp lines across his face, calm and gentle. I sat beside him, silent. He handed me a glass of wine, eyes warm and steady. "I heard the Milan exhibition is confirmed," he said. "Good, you deserve it." "I'm scared," I admitted. "The further I go, the more I feel like I'm leaving you behind." He turned, pressed a kiss to my forehead. "No, you're just coming back to yourself, and I'll be right beside you, whether you see me or not." I rested my head on his shoulder, saying nothing. Outside, the city glowed against the night, and in that quiet moment I understood. Some loves don't need to bind to survive. They only need to be trusted and allowed to grow in silence. 6 months had passed since the night I told Damien I would stay. 6 months of quiet work, of exhibitions, of nights when I came home to find him by the window, glass of wine in hand, eyes following every small movement of mine, as if he was still afraid I might vanish into air. I had grown used to him being there, not as a shadow, but as a heartbeat. He no longer spoke much about business, and I no longer asked. Between us existed an unspoken pact. He kept my world safe, and I gave him a reason to believe it was worth saving. One June morning, he woke me gently and said, "Wear a dress tonight. I'm taking you somewhere. Where? I murmured sleepily. To where it all began, he said, and there was something unreadable in his eyes. The limousine carried us through the golden evening, out of the city. When it stopped, I looked up and froze. The Grand Hotel, the same one where I'd once fainted among chandeliers and strangers, stood gleaming before us. Why here? I whispered. Because where we began, he said softly, is where I want to rewrite the ending differently. The ballroom doors opened and I gasped. Gone was the crowd, the noise, the glittering chaos. In their place, hundreds of candles lining the walls, their golden light reflected across mirrored glass. A small quartet played softly in the corner, and the faint scent of orchids drifted through the air. I turned toward him. Damien was watching me, his expression tender, almost boyish. He held out a hand. Dance with me? I took his hand, warm, steady, achingly familiar. As the music swelled, he drew me close, guiding me through the empty floor. I remember the first night we were here, he said quietly. You stood alone in a crowd that didn't see you, but I did. I smiled faintly. I thought you were judging me. He shook his head, a small smile tugging at his lips. I was stopping to look. We moved together in slow circles, our steps echoing softly. I saw candlelight glint in his eyes, saw his hands tremble slightly, as if he was holding something too precious to risk losing. When the music faded, he didn't let go. The lights dimmed, leaving only the halo of candles around us. Then, slowly, Damien dropped to one knee. My breath caught. From his pocket, he drew a small velvet box. Inside, a vintage ring gleamed, a green jade stone, catching the light like something alive. This was my grandmother's, he said, his voice thick. She told me once that if I ever found someone who made me want to be human again, I should give it to her. My eyes blurred with tears. He looked up at me, steady and sincere. You were never invisible to me, Clara. Not in a crowd, not in the dark, not even when you tried to run. I saw you, always you. All the moments between us came rushing back. The first glance, the storms, the nights of silence, the fragile peace. I nodded, breath trembling. Hours. He stood, slipped the ring onto my finger, and pulled me into his arms. Applause broke out. I turned. Maya stood by the archway, camera in hand, tears sparkling in her eyes. Beside her, Isabella smiled, not with pride, but with faith. You planned this well, I whispered, resting my head against his chest. Even Maya? Damien chuckled softly. First time I've ever needed help for a plan, they didn't hesitate. Maya came forward, hugging me tightly. Look at you, she whispered. Who would have thought the girl who fainted at that party would be the one to make Damien Voss kneel? Isabella placed a hand on my shoulder, her smile radiant. Welcome to the real family, Clara. Not one built on power, but on trust. I took Damien's hand and looked up at him. In the glow of the ballroom, his smile was calm, certain, the kind you remember for a lifetime. The night passed like a dream. When everyone left, he led me to the balcony overlooking the city. Below us, the lights shimmered like a sea of stars turned upside down. He wrapped his arm around me, voice low and rough. When I met you, I thought I was losing everything, but I was just being given a chance to start over. I leaned against his shoulder, my hand brushing the ring on my finger. I used to think falling was the end, I whispered. But maybe it was how you found me. Damien tightened his hold on me. No, Clara, he murmured. It's how we found each other, Somewhere behind us, the music began again, soft, distant, almost like a heartbeat. I closed my eyes, feeling his warmth, his breath, his presence. For the first time since that night long ago, the world felt utterly still. No light, no darkness, only us, ours.